1867 Sports Show coming at you, episode 5. Kyle Kirkwood, Kyle Skinner. How you doing tonight, buddy?
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. We're on time tonight. We're just doing fantastic. Didn't have to wait for anything, to get started here. So we're rolling. Our gas tank is full. We're ready to rock.
Listen, life happened today. I should be so lucky that I'm even here at this point. But I mean, not to turn a curveball into a inelegant soliloquy here or analogy, I guess is the real word.
Soliloquy.
Now, look,
Look at
I'm busting out some
this.
words tonight. We're gonna get fancy. But did you watch a little hockey this weekend? Did you take in any of the circus that really came to town in Toronto, known as the NHL All-Star game?
I did. And yeah, I mean, interesting little competition they had, whether that be skills or shitty. Let's just put it that way.
I was gonna say competition is a very generous use of the term of what we just watched there.
Yeah, but no, I caught a bit of it. I caught a bit of it. I know that you had some thoughts that were brewing there when we were talking on the weekend, but yeah, overall, I mean, I think that the city of Toronto, obviously, they like to put things in a very majestic state. They like to have the pageantry behind all of their events, and I think that that was really the main attraction behind this weekend. I mean, you're seeing all the celebrity captains, and they're mic'd up behind the benches. Bieber's wearing a coat that could fit me. It was something.
Bublé's
So
on some other planet on microdoses of mushrooms. It's a whole
yeah,
scene.
my God, yeah. And like, just spitting it right out on national television too, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting, man. It was interesting.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the game?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, there's again, being an Ottawa-based podcast, obviously we've had a few run-ins with the Toronto fans over the years. Anyone who's ever been to CTC or Scotiabank or Corel Center or Palladium or whatever iteration of the Senators' home arena over the years it's been usually knows that it's pretty much a Toronto Maple Leafs home game whenever they come to town there. But there's not a lot of things the fans and I agree on. I think we were on lockstep for our opinions of a lot of not only the events, but the effort level
Yeah.
that got put out there. I mean, Kucherov is obviously the glaring example as far as, what was the classic, I'm just here so I don't get fined type
Yeah.
response to his weekend. But it really was more than that. It kind of shows that the NHL is at a crossroads right now, and I think they have found themselves stuck between who are you appealing to right
Mhm.
now? Because if you look at some of the show around the show, right? The Tate McRae's are coming in, and the friggin' jerseys themselves look like, a toddler came up with them, or you'd grab them with Happy
Absolutely
Meal.
atrocious
Yeah.
jerseys. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way. Absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, yeah, and of course designed by Mr. Bieber himself, so no surprise right there.
On that note, it's kind of like he took, his partnership with Tim Hortons to a jersey level, because he basically got the, whatever you want to call it, what do they call it? Is like Sans Comic
Oh yeah,
font?
Comic Sans font
Comic
there.
Sans, yeah, Comic Sans font, yeah.
Yeah,
He,
yeah,
he basically
you're on the right track
I'm on the
there.
right track. A little dyslexia kicking in there,
Yeah,
but it's okay. Anyways, but taking that right off of the Tim Hortons, Timbit box and popping it onto a jersey, which not even on the top where people are known to look when they look at a hockey sweater, they're on the bottom
yeah,
in all lowercase letters underneath the numbers. So again, you're watching the game. No wonder they had to have the highlights above each of the players on TV, because no one knew who was there.
right.
Like, unless you were actually at the game sitting right behind the bench, you have no idea who's on the ice at one time.
Yeah. Well, it's That's what I mean, right? Like on the one hand, so you're pandering to the younger generation there, and that's perfectly fine if that's the direction
Oh,
you want to go
you're
to.
you're walking a fine line between bitter old guy right now, Kyle.
Buddy, you're gonna see a lot of old man yells at cloud, get off my lawn rants. As long as we're talking about the NHL here from this past weekend, right? But like, if that's the route you want to go to, fine, lean into it. But you can't be the hey, this is a legitimate event where we're actually gonna crown, some champions, and we're actually gonna have some meaning behind the games and all that, versus it's for the kids. Who cares? It's kind of just, it's a fun day anyways, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you're stuck between these two polar extremes in this mushy middle where you're really appealing to no one, right? Like, at least in the circles of people, and I talked to a wide variety of people.
Absolutely no one.
Absolutely no one. But I talked to a wide variety of people, right? Like I talked to the older generations. I talked to kids that, I teach, and kind of got their sense on it. And like, no one came away from that weekend being like, best all-star game ever. Oh
Yeah.
man, did they nail it out of the park there, right? It really was, to your point, kind of a showcase of, hey, this is a celebrity from Toronto. Hey, you're from Canada. Hey, CN Tower in the background. Like,
Yeah.
that mixed in with just enough hockey to pass off as, a sporting event. So it really was lack of effort on the players' part, lack of foresight and thought put into the format and the events and everything in between. It was a glaring F in so many regards for me across the board. So they would not only have failed the project, I'd be having them redo the entire grade if I had them in my class there.
So basically, it's the anti-golf clap for the Toronto 2024 iteration of the All-Star game.
What is the anti golf clap there? So if it has to be a polite
Um,
version of boot, is it like a hiss? Is it?
I would either a hiss or a very stern glare.
Yeah. Yeah, just a slow shaking of the head there. Yeah. Curl your bottom lip and disapproval.
A fatherly disapproval look. Yeah, that's exactly what it has to be. So, to everyone who put forth that cluster of the NHL All-Star game in Toronto, the stern fatherly glare towards you.
Yeah. So I legitimately started thinking like, all right, am I going to be the guy who just comes and, bitches and moans and the whole time comes up with no
Yeah,
solutions? Or,
yeah,
oh, I could, but I'm not that guy, Kyle. I'm not that individual. So I came up with a few wrinkles that, again, if you're going to go the kids route, lean into it, right? Like, let's go ahead and put it on. Like, you ever see those smaller versions of the rinks there where you actually play like 3-on-3? I think it's
yeah.
mostly like inline hockey that you would do there, but put it on that, right? Like 3-on-3 full ice, like when the players really don't care that much, and like it's not working in its current format, right? So do some sort of 3-on-3 smaller ice surface. I think you could get some interesting things happening there, and maybe it's kind of more morphing towards like the NBA celebrity game, where rather than having guest coaches, it's literally a line of getting, Bieber skating around out there, and on the other side of the ice there, you got Mike Myers or something. I don't know.
So,
Sprinkle something in there for the kids, right?
so what you're saying is you want a pros versus Joes type of scenario where the NHL players just beat the ever loving shit out of celebrities.
Yeah. First of all, I would either A, love that, or B, intersperse said celebrities into the teams there where, oh, here comes Jim Carrey on a breakaway. Like, let's see how he does against Vasilevsky here, right? So, like, at least that if you're gonna lean into the shtick, lean
Yeah,
into it, right? If you
yeah.
want to make it serious, though, so two ideas kind of popped out to me here. But the first one was the heck with the player draft, the heck with even kind of the all-star format in and of itself. If we're just going to turn it into a dog and pony show here, why don't we do something along the lines of kind of like that NBA play-in tournament, but something a little bit more important than just money on the line? Let's take the top team in the Eastern Conference, top team in the Western Conference. They play a legitimate game. The winner of that game gets an automatic playoff berth. Doesn't lock in their seeding, just
Mhm.
guarantees that they make the postseason. So gives everyone something to play for the first 41 games of the season. Maybe things even get a little bit squirrely where, oh, only 3 games left till the All-Star break there. Okay, got to do our starter on back-to-backs because we're only 2 points back. So adds a
Yeah.
little intrigue to the regular season and has postseason ramifications on that. What's your knee-jerk reaction to that half-baked idea I just threw out at you?
Um, I think that you would get a lot of resistance from the actual teams themselves, but I mean, you're coming up with solutions, which again, you said you were going to. You're not just bringing problems.
Right.
But I mean, knee-jerk reaction is probably not the best scenario to get everyone motivated. But yeah, because I mean,
Well, you're
you
going to
look
tell me
at
that those two teams of players with an automatic playoff berth aren't going to probably put more effort into that game than potentially any other game the rest of the regular
but how
season?
much effort are they going to give the rest of the way?
Well, the rest of the way, you're still playing for your seeding, right? So
But yeah,
you could be a wild card at that point.
some of them won't care. Some will
Yeah.
just say, "Well, we're already clinched, so we're already there. Let's just rest up our players and not." I didn't think you're opening a huge can of worms there.
Yeah, well, great. Rest some players then, right? Like, go ahead, be healthy. Like, it isn't, and again, part of the beauty of hockey, right, is like more often than any other sport, are you going to see, an eighth seed or a seventh seed kind of go deeper because they happen to get hot at the right time, or the top seed just lost their top line center, or,
Mhm.
Dominic Hasek went and played in the Olympics and blew out his lower body, right? Like, stuff like that happens. But in instances like this, like you're rewarding what is the best team in the league. And if they can afford to all of a sudden rest some of their players, and then you build into their contracts where, guess what? All your performance bonuses are tied to making, instead of an all-star team, which is voted on by fans and media and whatever there, it's going to be, whether it's first team all NHL, you can add a couple of them, second team all NHL, third team all NHL. But in order to qualify for those, you need to suit up for whatever 65 games like the NBA does, right? Again,
Right?
I'm not trying to say, all right, NBA has gotten it
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
They
yeah.
got a lot of stuff wrong here, but
Sure.
tying in player availability to these major awards, which have real world financial implications
Yep.
rather than, oh, winning team gets $1 million. Okay, cool. 100 grand for each kind of player here. That's not going to move the needle. $5 million in signing bonuses will move the needle quite a
Yeah.
bit. So you are going to see people still advocate to suit up rather than just, oh, well, we clinched a playoff spot. See you in the spring. I'm going to go lay on a beach for the next 40 games.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, chucking money at stuff is always, came out on top of good ideas. So I mean, hey, why not?
Yeah.
But as we're talking and kind of thinking about something, I think this could be a potential solution to mitigate those Kucherov level efforts. Uh, what about this, where you have a North American All-Star game and a European All-Star game? So here's what it is. In North America, you've only
There's some jokes I'm going to avoid
yeah,
with that one right there.
yeah. Um, I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there, like, what? So in Don Cherry's famous words, he would have said, what? So one of them goes into the corners and the other one doesn't, or well, there's a reason why grapes, unfortunately, is not on television anymore. But we won't open that can of worms here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, maybe for another episode.
yeah.
But speaking of which, let's get
Dark
him on.
side of the rink, Don
Yeah,
Cherry Chronicles.
let's get him on the guest list and bring him on. I'm sure he has a lot to get off his chest. But
Yeah.
anyways, no, my thinking is that you get players because again, I think what you see for the lack of effort is that guys want to go home during the All-Star break. A lot
Yeah.
of these guys actually want to go and see their families or go on vacation, whatever it may be. I think that you get a lot more buy-in from everybody all around. Is that if you had just Canadian and US players compete in a skills competition, 3-on-3 All-Star game, whatever it may be, on the North American side, and then you have all the European players and Russian players compete over, in a selected city or host of cities over on that side. So that way, one, you get more guys going over there. There's more of a fan base that's going to come out to see, hey, Sweden's top players, Finland's top players, Russia's top players, Czech top players. You're going to get more of a buy-in over there from a lot of the fans and probably more of the players because they're going to be able to bring their families into this because a lot of them are still living over there, right?
Mhm.
So I think that could be something that could be put together fairly easily, given the landscape of what the NHL is doing with the overseas games and all that kind of good stuff. So, I mean, just food for thought as we're kind of spitballing here. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's interesting you bring that up too, because it also kind of ties into our next topic as well there too. But
Hmm.
not sure if you picked up on this in Bettman's, all-star presser that he was doing there. But for next year, they're not even doing an all-star game, right? So they're returning back to that. I can't remember. It's Four Nations Cup or Four
Yeah.
Nations Tournament or something like that there. But essentially, Canada, US, Sweden, and Finland are going to have a little mini tournament in lieu of the all-star game. And then in 2026, they go back to the actual all-star format. So
Which is
the
kind of weird timing wise because that's when the next Olympics are.
well, it also shows that even the NHL, as blind as they are to a lot of issues, kind of are self-admitting like, hey, this all-star thing's not going off
Yeah.
without a seamless plan here. Like, we realize there's some stuff that we need to tweak to it, but continually, just trying to reinvent the wheel with these little like, oh, well, this used to work, so let's bring back that format. Oh, people
Mm,
don't like it anymore. Let's bring back the player draft again. That'll work again this time, even though people didn't really like it more than the first time it ever ran because of the
right.
novelty wore off, right? So like you could certainly look at doing that, but taking that a step further, like in Olympic years, they have the like 2 week and change Olympic break. Why don't you just literally have it that all of a sudden the winning team or the players of the winning team somehow get more rest or a paid vacation or whatever, like, built
Yeah.
into it, so that they give a what, right? Because all these guys are all millionaires, right? Even the ones that are making league minimum, it's what 795,000, 850 now, I think, on the rookie scale. So
Yeah.
it's not something that they can't just go out and buy a first class ticket to Cancun on their own here. They want the time off, right? So either you need to incentivize them with a playoff buy or some sort of, like I was saying, hey, you clinched a seed here, right? To actually get some buy-in into actually giving a what on the ice for the game, or they get more time off during these all-star breaks, right? And so it's, I can go
Yeah.
there to Toronto, I can compete in the things, and I still get additional time off, which they quasi tried to do with, oh, every team's got this week that occurs during the season at some time where they won't have games scheduled. But like, just take a full on break. And why don't you now, because you've paid a lot of lip service to it, but you tried to integrate a few things, but aside from the PWHL promoting itself saying, hey, we're tied into All-Star Weekend, I didn't see a ton from the NHL being like, come check out this women's showcase event. Hey,
Yeah.
we've got this event going on. So maybe you do the men's, you know, kind of all-star break there, and then say, guys, piss off, see you in a week and a half, enjoy your time off here, you've earned it, good soldiers, away you go. And you pour some actual advertising dollars and revenue into it. Let's showcase the women's event, let's do a future stars game with like NCAA players, or something, right?
Yeah. Or, you know, here's another quick fix to a lot of the issues. Just have a skills competition.
Yeah.
Just axe the game. Send one player from each team to represent them in every single event.
Yeah.
So that way you've got 7 players coming in from each team, fastest skater, hardest shot. You've got the team relay that they used to have, and whatever, stick handling, whatever it may be. So that way, one, you get the most representation, and two, you're giving the people what they actually care about, which is the all-star, or sorry, the skills competition. So yeah, I think you're seeing that a lot with a lot of the all-star games with the NBA, with the NFL. It's just becoming more of more about the actual skill of the competition as opposed to the actual games themselves.
Yeah.
So let's just do the Pro Bowl dodgeball tournament. Let's do the NBA dunk contest and 3-point contest. Let's do the NHL hardest shot, fastest skater, and then obviously the one that I think everybody kind of thinks about when they talk about All-Star weekends with MLB, which is the home run derby,
Yeah.
right? Let's just do those. Everybody tunes into those anyway, and then the games just give them what you're talking about. Give them a break after that. Show up on a Saturday night, compete. Once you're done, you're off for a week.
Yeah.
There you go. We
Yeah.
just solved the issue.
Once again, that's info at 1857sportshow.com there. And we'll gladly take our royalty checks there, Gary Bettman. But
We got an email address now.
anything is possible once those checks start rolling in, buddy.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. They're sending the checks to the wrong email account. That's why we're
That's
not
that's why we haven't been paid for this yet. Unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of threw a segue in there a few topics ago, but you know, obviously I have the logo up behind me. So you haven't even mentioned my background yet.
Well, first of all, I was letting the people take in the visual spectacular that is your BC Lions
Yep.
shirt, which fades into the
Yep.
background, and then the Ottawa Fury hat, which pops out here. So you're kind of like a bearded chameleon tonight, right now.
Absolutely. And I've got my red maple wings behind me. So,
Yeah,
you know, it's
you're an angel.
and my microphone hat. Yeah, I'm an angel. Um I'm just a big hairy Canadian angel, let me just tell you that. But
Meanwhile, our audio only podcast listeners are changing the channel. Right
the
now.
hell are they talking about? I'll paint you a visual, everybody. Just microphone on my head, two red maple leaf ends coming out of my shoulders, and my giant frame blocking most of the logo. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah,
But anyways, there's another announcement that came out over the weekend that the NHL and the NHLPA have agreed to go to the 2026 and 2030 Olympics.
finally,
So
mercifully.
I'm just gonna say, so your thoughts on the NHL, you know, getting back into the big tournaments?
Well, you want to swing from I don't give a crap to suddenly I'm probably trying the most that I ever have in my entire life, other than maybe game 7 of the Stanley Cup finals. Like,
Mhm.
this is it, right? And the fact that someone like Connor McDavid has never represented Canada beyond, the
World
World
Juniors.
Juniors,
Yeah.
just because there's been no World Cup of hockey. Granted, when he was there in his rookie year, he was on Team North America, so
Yeah.
that's a little asterisk there. That was when it was the rookies and kind of sophomores there with that weird
Mhm.
format. And then never for the Olympics. And this is just a case of there was really no reason for it other than a lot of ego involved.
Yeah.
And, very rarely do I say it's not all Gary Bettman's fault here, but the IOC has to wear this a little bit too,
Yeah.
because like there's absolutely no reason why we should not have had best on best hockey for the past several iterations of the Olympics here.
Yeah. No, and I mean, obviously, you're going to have the purists that say, well, they're professionals, they're not amateurs. This is the best amateur athletes. Well, if you look at every single Olympic event, everyone is a professional.
Yeah.
They train like professionals, they get endorsements like professionals, they get paid like professionals. They are professionals. So
Yeah.
it just makes no sense that the NHL would not be involved, because this is where most of the best players in the world are,
Yeah.
right?
No, no,
So
no one talks about the 1992 Dream Team. They always talk about the 1967. Oh, it was the UCLA Bruins squad that represented the U.S. Like, this is just, again, it's common sense. The biggest stage, the kind of crowning achievement of, there is
yeah.
no real world championship here where you've got legitimate teams from Finland fielding
Mhm.
squads here to vie for the world's version of the Stanley Cup. This is it. So
Yeah.
get the best players there rather than the absolute stinker that was kind of the replacement players that we saw go at the last version.
It was kind of like a glorified Spengler Cup,
Hmm.
to be perfectly honest. I mean, not to take away from the Spengler Cup, because that's great hockey as well, and it obviously holds a very, you know, good place in Canadian hockey, because it's just a tradition that, you know, not a lot of other sports have. But you think about Olympics, you think about the best. I think about the most memorable one for me, which was obviously 2010, because that was really probably the best hockey game that's been played in a gold medal, you
Hmm.
know, for men's hockey at least.
Hmm.
And you think about the rivalry between Canada and the US. You think about the viewership that they had for that game, and then you think about the way that it ended, with the US tying it very late in the game, deflating the Canadian crowd in Vancouver, and then for, again, the golden boy Sidney Crosby to score that goal to win the gold medal for Team Canada. I mean, you can't really get better than that. You can't write a better script than that. So save for the Ottawa fans who were very dejected after the what was it, 2002, when Dominic Hasek blew out his knee, or 2006.
Yeah.
But anyways, you know, I think that when you look at when people represent their country, whether they're the management team, the coaching team, or the actual players themselves, this means a lot. This means a lot to more players outside of North America than the Stanley Cup does, right? You think about, the Alex Ovechkins, the Yarmer Yagers, like, historically, players who come from those countries will play harder at the Olympics for their country than they will for their team for a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it, right? They're brought up over there to win gold medals. They're not brought up over there to win Stanley Cups.
Hmm.
So yeah, I like it. I think that this was definitely on the table after the last Olympics, where we kind of saw, yeah, you know what, this is still good. It's still the Olympics, but it's not what it could be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're not going to have the what ifs now.
yeah, and sprinkled into that same announcement there too is the World Cup of Hockey is also coming back as well. So
Yep.
obviously Olympic participation 2026, 2030. So essentially the plan is now every 2 years they're going to be alternating, right? So,
Yeah.
it'll be 2028, 2032, et cetera, et cetera. But
Mhm.
just getting these international events back on is huge, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see, and again, Canadian sports show, so we won't dive too deep into it here. But what is going to be the stance on Russia participating in these
Yeah.
events, right? Because obviously there's some real world implications here.
Hmm.
IOC has made it pretty clear in other facets, but guess what? Right? Like you can't deny that, oh no, the Russian volleyball team isn't participating in the summer games. We're losing sleep over it. Russia's a huge force with some very memorable Olympic moments there. Are they
Yeah.
still going to be holding steady in 2026? Are they going to be under some sort of weird, IOC Russian athletes, white flag weird setup, or is it kind of going to be back to what it was, pre-Ukraine days? So again, I don't necessarily need an answer from the NHL right now on that, but that's something that as we get closer to 2026, get ready for that storyline to
Yeah.
start kicking into high gear there.
Yeah. I mean, as a Ukrainian myself, I have some thoughts and some
Yeah.
feelings, but again, we won't dive into that. But um, anyways, let's move on to something that we can actually speak fondly about, is where Team Canada is going to be in 2026, and kind of you and I can bounce some names back and forth as to what the roster could look like, when they do make those announcements leading into the game. So, I mean, we already talked about the most obvious player to ever make a Team Canada in history, which is Connor McDavid. I think
Mhm.
that's the guy that you have. That's probably the guy wearing the C when it comes time to playing that game. But there's a lot of intrigue around the roster because, again, you got a lot of young guys who are just coming into the league right now. You've also got a lot of guys who might be going out at
Mhm.
the same time, and we're talking legendary players. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll turn it over to you first. Like, who are some slam dunks for you in regards to making the team in 2026?
Yeah. Well, rewinding it just a smidge here, you mentioned the 2010 Olympic roster out in Vancouver. This
Hmm.
2026 roster reminds me a lot of how that one kind of shaped up. Because if you look at who was included in that one, you had kind of the Martin Brodeur last kick at the can, but Luongo was kind of mostly the starter. Then you had all sorts of aging veterans mixed in with some of these young up and comers. So I think you're going to see a really interesting blend of, as you said, early 20 somethings and kind of like early 30 to late 30 somethings. I don't think you're
Yeah.
going to see a whole lot of 27, 28, 26 year olds in there. Like they're kind of
Yeah.
going to be skewed towards those two extremes. And I mean, to me, that there's a couple of slam dunks here, right? You got to go McDavid. You got to go Nathan McKinnon. You've got to go
Hmm.
Crosby. Again, he's going to be up there in age by then, but I think he's going to be kind of that old wily veteran who, just from how many big games he's been in and Hockey Canada probably wanting to have. Look, we finally got Crosby and
The two of
McDavid
them
on the ice
together.
at the same time.
Yeah.
He'll be on it. Then you get into some of that newer generation there as far as the slam dunks. I would put Connor Bedard as an absolute lock. He'll be on there. I
Yep.
think Braden Point, barring any kind of
Yep.
injury, like the breakouts that he's had, he'll
Mhm.
be on there. And then on defense, Cale Makar is an absolute lock, right? He'll be your number one defenseman out there. Aside from those guys, though, like those are my like bulletproof locks.
Yeah.
There are some people that I think will be on the team, but I could be talked out of them one way, shape, or another. But those are my guys that are 100%. I would be flabbergasted if they weren't on there.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, I agree with those, and I mean, there's a lot of similarities in my points as well, regarding those players. But I going back to your Crosby point, I think that this is exactly the type of player that you want to bring in, not only for the status, but he still play at such a high level,
Yeah.
and he plays such a two-way game that you need guys like that on a team that maybe is a bunch of all-stars who are, offensive first players,
Mhm.
right? So they see the old guy going back checking, grinding in his own corner, getting it out, getting out of the zone. That's going to push those younger guys to do that a little bit more. So that's exactly the type of guy who you'd want. But I mean, I think another lock to me, like Matt Barzal, the way that he's blown up over the last few years, especially with his skating ability, he gets lost a lot playing in Long Island, doesn't get a lot of national television exposure, but the guy's a fantastic hockey player. And I think that you put him on a second line, you're really starting to get a lot of speed in that lineup, right? So, I mean, other guys to me that I think will be very hard pressed to keep out of the lineup. I mean, I look at a perfect third line in this scenario with like a Brad Marchand, a Mark Scheifele, and a Mark Stone.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of that pesky third line that not a lot of other countries are going to be able to match. That will actually win you a lot of games,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then you look at just from a pure talent standpoint. I mean, Mitch Marner obviously has to be in the conversation. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, I think, would be in the conversation. Um, the Sam Reinharts of the world, the Adam Fantillis of the world. Steven Stamkos still playing at a very high
Yeah.
level. He'll be one of the elder statesmen of the team. But I mean, and then we're not even talking about Jonathan Marchessault,
Yeah.
Rob Thomas, John Tavares, Zach Hyman, Travis Konechny. Like, these are all guys who can pretty much play on any type of lineup, but what's the fit going to be given the makeup of the roster?
Yeah. And that's just it too, right? Like the ones I just listed were my locks. A lot of the ones that you had just mentioned there. So in my next tier, I had locks, and then I had likely. So
Yeah,
I had very similar. I had Stone, Hyman, Marchand, Stamkos, Barzell, and Scheifele were in
right.
my very very likely column again. Right? Who knows? They drop off drastically in the next 2 years. Maybe they won't be there. Right? They keep playing it the way they are, probably will be there. So
Yeah,
I could be talked out in or out of them based on what happens over the next, 700 days. But at the end of the day, I kind of view those guys as being there for sure. And what you have to remember about the Olympics too, right? Like, uh, if you just were building it based off of what position they play, you would be omitting so many
oh
players
yeah.
because Canada produces centers like no other nation on earth, right? So you're going to end up seeing out of like your top 12, probably 9 of them are centers, right? And they're just playing on the wing because
Most likely.
we
Yeah,
we just got to get them in the lineup somehow. So
yeah.
again, you're for those that are listening right now, they're thinking like, well, where are all the left wingers and whatnot? Well, that's future us to figure out, right? Like, just get the best players out there; they'll figure
Yeah,
out how to go up one side of the ice or the other.
yeah. No, 100%. I mean, I think that we're talking about the easy part of this roster right now,
I was waiting to see when this would come up.
which is the forwards. Because I
Yeah,
mean, the forwards that Canada has been pumping out from a youth to an elderly perspective lately, it's fantastic. I mean, we're talking about 9 out of the 12, players on this roster potentially playing the same position. So
Mhm.
having to go elsewhere, right? It gets a little bit thinner on defense and a lot thinner in the
Yeah.
net.
Now,
So
what
let's
before we move off forwards, let me throw one very, very stealth Like, don't expect him to be there, but if he
Okay.
keeps progressing like he is going to be there based on his different skill set than anyone else, keep an eye on him and his age there. And again, Ottawa, it's always Stutzel Byfield. Keep an eye on Quinton Byfield at 6'5", and the way he's starting to come into his own out on the
Yeah.
West Coast in LA. We knew he was going to be one of those guys that he wasn't going to enter the league as an 18-year-old, as big as he was, and be able to have an impact on the game.
Yeah.
He's starting to finally figure out how to use that man-sized body of his.
Yeah.
And if he keeps developing like he is over the next 2 years, like I could see him cracking that roster as that big power forward that's going to go into the dirty areas and muck it up in front of the net and just be a nightmare to play against.
Absolutely. And 100%. I had his name on my list as well as, let's see what happens in the next year and a half. So,
Go
um,
figure. Former Sudbury Wolf
I
there,
know,
going back to the motherland.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like I actually saw a lot of him trying to follow the Sudbury Wolves as much as I do. But yeah, he's just become exactly what LA I think expected when they got him
Yeah.
at the number 2 overall selection, right? You know, I don't want to put this comparison out there, but I'm going to. You look at again the big body, the skating ability. He's not afraid to drop the mitts and fight. He can put the puck in the net. Kind of similar to an Eric Lindros type of player. You know what I mean? Not as physical as Lindros was, but
Yeah.
brings the same elements to a game that Lindros did when he was in his peak. So, I mean, he had a lot.
Let's put it this way. I think Byfield's maybe a little bit too nice for his own good.
That's the thing. And
If you put Brady Kachuk's
oh,
personality into Quinton Byfield's body, guess what? Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's kind of the one thing that's missing. But again, like I mentioned before, he's not afraid to get in,
Yeah.
to use the body. He's not afraid to drop the gloves if he needs to. So yeah, he's exactly the type of player that you would pop in on a fourth line just to run havoc, against a lot of these countries that don't like physical play.
Yeah. He's the
So
perfect guy to have as like that extra forward. And
yeah,
okay, let's get the big game against Sweden or Finland out of the way with Latvia. All right, let's see what this kid can do there. And
yeah,
maybe you give Crosby the day off or something like that. And
yeah, or
rest those 39-year-old bones of
yeah,
yours there and let's kind of see what he can do. And then oh wow, he's really bringing it on the
yeah.
international stage here.
Yeah. No, and again, I think that's a good progression for his game too. And I mean, he's learning from a guy like Andrei Kopitar, which is not a terrible thing
All
either.
right.
So, but yeah, let's dive into the defense core because again, this I think
The
could
easier of the two remaining
the
options.
easier of the two remaining options, because there's still some really good players here, but it's just a matter of what are they going to look like in 2 years, right? So, I mean, you mentioned Cale Makar. He's the best defenseman on the planet right now.
Yeah.
That's as easy of a pick as McDavid is.
Yeah.
Then you have a group of guys kind of in that, look, they're really good. And I think that they're going to make the team and they'll serve their purpose, like the Devon Taves, like the Noah Dobson. Like, I think those are the types of guys you want to bring in. Big guys, they can skate, they can play power play minutes, they can play penalty kill minutes. And then you've got that second tier of, all right, well, these guys are good for their teams, but where do they fit in our lineup? So Morgan Riley's, Dougie Hamilton's, the Thomas Shabots, the Shea Theodores.
Yeah.
Then you've got the elder statesmen with, Drew Doughty, Alex Pietrangelo. Where do they end up going?
Yeah.
Right. So
well, it's a really interesting conundrum, and it kind of reminds me of a few Olympic cycles ago there, where for those that are in the Ottawa region, Mike Fisher was getting some legitimate consideration to actually make the men's Olympic team there, and ultimately didn't get selected. But it's kind of like that trying to fit in behind Makar, like do you want to go with familiarity? Do you want to go with, all right, we're putting an emphasis on got to have, right shot defensemen on a certain side of the ice. Like, so some of that's going to tie into who's going to be the coaching staff. Right. And so it's a case of right fit at the right time. I think that they're going to come up with, barring some wonderkin rookie coming in and absolutely blowing the, barn doors off the place there. I think it's going to be choosing between, not just, all right, we got to take 6 guys here and we've only got 7 real options. I think it's like, all right, we're looking to fill 5 spots. We've probably got 15 to 20 people who you could talk me into or out of. So,
Yeah,
I mean, you named a few of the people there. And again, I could be talked out of any of these, but I ended up with Taves, Dobson, Theodore, and Hamilton. And then just again, based purely on hoping he continues to develop, is Owen Power out in
yeah,
Buffalo.
yeah. I had his name on my list as well, and he's #1 overall pick.
Yeah.
Obviously, a great pedigree coming from the University of Michigan, and then taking that next step to becoming a pretty good defenseman out in Buffalo. So being pretty good doesn't get you to the Olympics. You got to be that elite of the elite to get there. So I 100% agree. I think that he's in that same arena as Quinton Byfield is.
Yeah.
These are guys that I think you're hoping are
Yeah.
taking the next step, that because they're the difference makers that not a lot of countries have the luxury of having.
Yeah.
6'5" guys who could skate. I mean, any country would take that. And again, it all depends on who the executive team is, who the coaching staff is, because that's going to be the ultimate decider. So yeah, I mean, I feel okay about the defensive core. I really do. It's just there's a lot of unknowns. Whereas with the forwards, it's like, well, you can pretty much chalk in 9 to 10 of those guys already, and then just have
Like
4
going
flow.
shopping at Costco with an
Yeah.
unlimited Amex card there. Just, yeah, all right, here we go. Take a couple of these there. All right, yeah. Ninth
Yeah.
centerman, sure, we'll take that. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So there you go. Like, you're shopping with an unlimited prepaid Amex for your forwards. For your decor, you've got $100 stipend, and you got to make it last with every single cent. Now we go over to the goalies, which is we're going to
Food
you
stamps.
know, and not to say that the guys who will be in the running aren't top notch goalies, because they're in the NHL. Like,
Yeah.
obviously they're fantastic goalies. You and I would not be able to even come close to the output that they're giving out right now. However, when you look at the top goalies in the world right now, look at the top goalies in the NHL right now, where does the first Canadian guy come in? You're going down that list,
Yeah.
and it gets low and low and low. I mean, there's a few interesting names that you look at. I mean, Aiden Hill, I think, obviously came in last year with Vegas, and became that big, I'm going to stop every single impossible shot type of goalie ever. Gave him that steady backing that they had. Tristan Jerry, again, don't really get too excited hearing about that name, but I mean, he's playing for a team like Pittsburgh, where he's got a lot of leadership in front of him. They're not really having the type of year that you'd want to say, yeah, I absolutely hitch my wagon to that guy and have him lead us to a gold medal. You got Cousin Stu
Cousin Stu.
out in Edmonton. I
We
mean,
got to get
good.
Cousin Stu on the show here. I gotta pull in my family ties at
Yeah,
some point here.
absolutely. You got to get Cousin Stu on here just for the mustache alone. I mean,
Yeah.
that's 100% what we got to get him on there for. But again, hottest team in the NHL right now.
Yeah.
Made a great run last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So he's had some big game experience already. He's stepping up right now to take over the spot from a guy who they paid $5 billion a year to come in and be the #1, right? So it's not that he's afraid of competition. It's not that he hasn't been on the big stage. So that could be an interesting, wild card to see if he can, come in as the potential #1. Devin Levi.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, or is it Devon Levi?
Devin Levi.
Devin Levi, yeah. I after that first episode of my pronunciation of of SGA,
Putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
exactly, but this is a guy, again, I think falls in that category like we talked about with the Owen Powers, with the Quinton Byfields. Is he going to take that
Be the
next
guy.
step to
Yeah.
becoming the guy? Like, he showed some promise at the World Juniors when he was there. Can he become the Carey Price type of goalie who shines at the World Junior level, then takes this game to the international level, post World Junior? And then the wild card, because I love this guy's attitude, because he's just feisty. He'll fight anyone. And I think that's what you kind of need, a little sandpaper to get underneath, a team like the US and whatnot. Jordan Binnington,
Yeah.
like
So I flip-flopped on Binnington several times here because you're right. In small doses, that's what you love to see, right?
yeah.
But he and you've seen it in the results of the anonymous player polls. You've seen it in post-game comments. Like I think he might piss off a lot of his own
Oh, he
teammates.
does for sure, and yet he's not going to make the team. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
it would be an interesting wild card. It's like throwing Ron Hextall in on those '90s Olympic teams, right? And that's exactly what it would be like.
Yeah. So I mean, exactly. Everyone that you just mentioned there, right? Like Logan Thompson, maybe, right? Like there's just all sorts of wild question marks here.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit jarring. And again, we already said it. They're NHL goalies here. We're not saying that they're not great athletes and all that. That's not the point of this. The point of it is when you look at it through the lens of every other Olympic team we've had, it's been, Martin Brodeur, Roberto Luongo, Marc-Andre Fleury, Carey
Curtis
Price,
Joseph.
like, like just future Hall of Famers
Yeah.
to go to, well, even if pick any of those three, who's your number one right now? If I put a
Yeah.
gun to your head.
I mean, like I said, when I look at the list, I think that I would probably lean towards a guy like Cousin Stu.
Yeah. So
He'd probably be my guy. And then with Aiden Hill backing up.
yeah, so there you go. So Cousin Stu, tending the twine, maybe putting a little $5 parlay on it. You're not betting your mortgage
No.
that he's going to go out there and perform in that game. And so when you contrast it to A, what Canada has used to been having, and B, you look at, all right, if Russia is to participate in it, their trio is likely Sorokin, Shesterkin, and Vasilevsky, any of which would be the unquestioned number one starter on Team Canada, and one of them is going to be there in a suit and tie and just
Yeah.
eating donuts in the press box and never even seeing the ice, right? So it's
And that's
just
not
stark
even
contrast.
and that's not even counting, the young rookie Askarov, who
Yep.
first round pick, trending to be that next great Russian goaltender. So I mean, yeah, I mean, you look at you mentioned earlier with Team Canada pumping up forwards like their Pez dispensers, right?
Yeah.
Man, like any one of those goalies that Russia puts out there, you're in a great spot.
Yeah.
Right. So
the good news
yeah,
is they can only dress one of them
the
at a
good news
time.
is they can only dress one at a time, or sorry, start one at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and that's the fun part about it, because you look at the makeup of a lot of these rosters. I mean, US is going to be loaded. They've got talent everywhere. They'll probably be the favorite going into 2026. Sweden will be loaded. Finland will be loaded. So the way that Canada's put together will be really unique, because they're going to have to play the type of hockey that's going to take these other teams out of their games. So maybe we get more of those sandpaper type guys that just get underneath people's skin, and we get the Kachuk brothers all fired up and get them kicked out for the tournament. Yeah. That's what you gotta think about when you're playing these types of games. But all in all, I think that's a good conversation that a lot of people are going to have over the next little while. So anyways, let's move on.
Well, I did one step further here. So you left it at the players. I went all the way to the coaching staff here.
Oh,
so
there you go.
Here is my proposed coaching staff for 2026 here. I'm going Jim Montgomery from the Boston Bruins. I'm going to go Bruce Cassidy of the Vegas Golden Knights and of Ottawa Ties. And then you want to talk about people who can maybe even get under people's skin and do it from the bench. I'm going Patrick Waugh as an assistant coach out there too.
You go. I like it. And, all three of those guys very well deserving. And I mean, even going into the box, who's going to be the GM of the team? I mean, look no further than Joe Sakic, Burnaby Joe.
Yeah.
Putting together an all-star stud team in Colorado, and I think has his finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in the country right now in regards to hockey. So I think that, with the players that we just mentioned, with your all-star coaching staff that you've got in place, and then you put in a guy like a Sakic and maybe like a Barry Trotz or something like that can kind of lead from that front office perspective. And Steve Yzerman obviously is a good candidate for that position too. Yeah, I mean, I think you've got probably more star power up in the box and behind the bench than you do on the bench.
Uh, Gets people way more excited about Olympics 2026 than the future NHL All-Star games. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so transitioning to another sport on the ice here, we're gonna
On the ice.
flip it over to the world of figure skating, which my mother, shout out to Kathy Skinner here, was a professional figure skater, figure skating coach for many years. So my pronunciation of names hasn't improved very much, but I'm at least familiar with the on ice product and the happenings in the world of figure skating. But
Golf clap for Mama Kath. Golf
we'll
clap
get
for
there. We
Mama
haven't given
Kath.
out a golf clap today there. So there you go. Kathy
That's
Skinner.
right.
Congratulations. Um, Camila Valieva banned for
Very, very
violations of
nicely done.
anti-doping policies there. So what was your initial thoughts on our friend A getting the ban, and then B, US gets bumped up to gold, Japan gets bumped up to silver, and we get a big middle finger to Team Canada for bronze?
So, and that's why I wanted to talk about this tonight, because I mean, you talk about the absolute crooked nature of Olympic sports,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to Russian figure skaters and Canadian figure skaters. The history is not good.
it's not
So,
great.
no, no. So, I mean, obviously, this was a huge story during the singles events with Miss Valieva.
Look at you
Testing.
rolling your consonants there, eh?
Absolutely. But yeah, like testing positive and dope for dope. And it just kind of brings to mind, like, when are these things actually going to, get justified properly? When are these things, like, when are these countries going to get their comeuppance? You know what I mean? Like, it's one of these things where you get so pissed off, because it's like, if Canada did this, they'd be out, no questions asked,
Well,
right?
we'd be apologizing for it at a minimum, right?
Yeah, of course we
So
would.
sorry, that's on us, guys.
But I mean, the part that I think just pisses everybody off is that you just mentioned it. Oh, well, Russia gets bumped out from getting the gold medals from a team perspective, which is what should happen,
Mhm.
right? US gets bumped up to gold. Hey, great for them. Congratulations, new gold medalists. Japan gets bumped up to silver. Hey, congratulations, you're the new silver medalist. Oh yeah, but we're still going to give the Russian athletes, their just due, because they earned all that, right? But they didn't.
Yeah.
They
That's the
didn't.
thing, though. They didn't.
I don't know how much more evidence they needed to overrule the whole team getting their medals, but like, when is it going to be a situation where it's going to actually end up favorably for the Canadians who get screwed by Russians in figure skating?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm of course, sorry, I'll let you get to your point in a second there, but like, I'm going back to, obviously, very famous, situation with the famed Canadian duo of Soleil and Pelletier, who were robbed of the gold medal in the ice dancing category, only to then say, "Oh, well, you can share the gold medal with the Russians. You can share it."
it's like a
Like,
friendship
yeah,
locket there. We'll just
like
break it in half, and best goes to you, friend stays with me.
like, oh, how nice of you guys that you didn't even penalize the team that ultimately was caught cheating and paying off other judges to score them favorably.
Yeah.
So this just kind of brings that vibe to this whole situation. And I mean, I feel for the Canadian athletes who obviously worked very hard and got to that point of, competing for that medal. But it's not surprising, if I'm going to be honest.
Mhm.
And yeah, let's just hope that in the 2026 version of it, we don't have to be in that situation, and we just, the Canadian team just beats them outright. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, and again here too, you want to actually look at it as far as, all right, let's go by the rule book. In the ISU rule book, it quite explicitly says that if someone gets DQ'd, everyone gets bumped up a spot. There's
Yeah.
no, well, you kind of screwed up, but you little scamp there, you learned from it. Gold no more. We'll bump
Yeah.
you down a couple spots there. Slap on the wrist, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to have these stupid problems because it's not like hockey, football, basketball, where there's a score. How many times did you put that into the net? Right? It's all subjective. So you can say, all right, we're going to put in these voting guidelines and how you're supposed to score things. But at the end of the day, it's all subjective. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to go subjective, like you might as well I would almost love to see like parallel, kind of like the Oscars versus the People's Choice Awards. Like, just get a bunch of regular Joe schmoes who've never watched skating before and see who they score as like, holy crap, did you see the stuff that she was doing out there? And see how that synchronizes up with the judges. Like, doesn't have to be official, but just like all right, Steve from Wisconsin
Yeah, do a fan
voted
vote.
this as a
Yeah,
9.8. Look at him
yeah.
go.
Do a fan vote, and all the judges score it 9.6, 9.4, 9.5, and the fan vote 7.1.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the fans in Medicine Hat who had control of the vote this time here really didn't like that one.
Yeah. You've got one skater who's judged by Minsk, and then the next one is judged by Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Yeah. But I mean, it's again, it kind of flies in the face of everything you're taught, about sports growing
Yeah.
up, as far as, all right, do the right things, don't cheat, the system will protect you. Nope. Right.
No.
And it continually comes up in the same sport over and over and over and over
Oh
again.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just at the Olympic level. Like, trust me, there's some horror stories that go on all the way down to the grassroots level, as far as, people just doing everything they can beyond where the rink is to influence the decisions that go on. And so, you know, what did we land on for our opposite of golf clap there?
We've landed on the elderly father's stern glance.
Yeah, disappointed elderly father slowly shaking his head. So that's what the ISU gets here for their absolutely bogus judgment. And Skate Canada has already said they're going to appeal it.
Yeah.
I doubt it goes very farther than that, but they're going to get a strongly worded email, I guess.
Yeah, they will get a stern glance from the elderly fathers of the skaters. But yeah, I mean, last thing, how pissed off must Ben Johnson be every time he sees one of these things happen where someone gets caught cheating and they don't get their medal taken away from them? I mean, it just, again, it goes back to if this was anyone else from any other country, they'd be out. Right? They'd be out of they'd be out of trouble. They wouldn't have anything happen to them. And anyways, we'll leave that, because I think that would be a really good episode to talk about, is the Ben Johnson, race in 1988.
Yeah.
We've already done a documentary on it, but we could dive into it because I got a lot of thoughts. A lot of thoughts in that situation.
I got some opinions. Got some things I want to say there.
A couple of things to get off my chest. But anyways, that being said, we'll leave it at that. And again, hopefully the Skate Canada thing can at least open up some eyes that maybe are still shut during this whole process. But last thing I think that we want to mention tonight, going back over to the world of soccer. Haven't really talked about that since episode 1, so getting back into it with that, but on the men's side this time. And we talked about the GOAT of Canadian women's soccer with Christine Sinclair. Now we're going to the other side of it with, obviously, I think the most talented men's soccer player that the country's ever produced, with Alphonso Davies.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably saw it. You people listening probably saw this. So he sustained a potentially very serious knee injury in a game last week, playing for his home club in Bayern Munich. Turns out that he's only going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks with a ligament strain. So let's just, golf clap for, ligaments holding up. And
good job keeping a strong left knee there, Alphonso. Good work.
But they were mentioning that not only is he going to be missing a few games for Bayern Munich, but he's also potentially going to be missing some qualifier games for Team Canada.
Yeah.
And obviously the Canadian national team has made a lot of strides, and they've become, a solid, I don't want to say contender, but a solid player.
Dark horse.
Yeah, it's still a dark horse pick in the men's soccer landscape. But I mean, when you lose your best player for these ever important qualifying games, not that they need to, they need to qualify because they're already in being one of the host nations, but it just kind of gives them that momentum that they need going forward to potentially, get the bad taste out of their mouth from the last World Cup that we saw. So, I mean, not only that, but Bayern Munich's also in a pretty tight race for the #1 overall seed in the Bundesliga with, again, pardon my pronunciation, anyone from Germany.
Pardon my French.
Yeah. Leverkusen.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
that's not too bad. I think
Yeah.
so. But anyways, they're two
We're
points
big Bundesliga fans
big,
over here.
oh, very big Bundesliga fans.
Yeah.
But we just crack our backs open and just have a good old time
If
with
it's not Bavarian soccer, I'm not interested.
we're tailgating with the best German bratwurst you've ever had in your life.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, I mean, so this obviously has club level effects and country level effects. So, I mean, your thoughts when you saw the injury and kind of where things are right now.
Yeah. Well, obviously the pardon the pun, knee-jerk reaction here is thank God it wasn't, any kind
Yeah,
of full tear or anything where it's oh, he's got to go in for reconstructive surgery or this, that, the other, you know. Selfishly, oh no, Bayern Munich didn't win their umpteenth championship in the last 20 years. Like I could care less about the club season if I'm being perfectly honest here. So it really is coming down to Team Canada. They don't need to qualify. They're already in. Let's get them healthy. But what scares me is this isn't the first knee, lower body, leg injury that's happened to him in a fairly short period of time
yeah,
here. So it's not even so much that, oh, 3 to 4 weeks, like, oh, when's he coming back? Get healthy. Take 6 months off. I don't even
yeah,
care right now, right? But it really is okay. Is this just a rough patch he's going through, or are we now starting to get concerned that it's going to be every bump or slide tackle or anything like that? You're looking at like, ooh, is he going to be out? Is he going to be out? Whereas when you saw him coming up as a teenager, like he was
yeah.
playing with just such reckless abandon and ferocity and speed and the ability to just cut on a dime, and all of that puts pressure on your lower extremities, right? So it's
Mhm.
more so just what's the long term effects that's going to be coming of this. And even if he is injured, right? Like a 75% Alphonso Davies is still a
Yeah,
very, very talented soccer player who is going to be on the World Cup roster. But
yeah,
it's like, right? How much of that, if we're looking at his career as kind of, a graph chart here, have we seen the peak and now we're starting to come on the downslide because injuries are going to sap them a little bit? Or is this just one of those, oh, there's a little fluctuation in the market,
yeah,
sky rise to the moon, Canada wins the 2026 World Cup, right? So
yeah.
it's more the long-term outlook that I viewed this injury news from.
Yeah, and the first name that came to mind when I saw the injury and obviously his previous injury, that's of a comparable perspective is Kylian Mbappe.
Hmm.
Because you see that big, powerful, fast, strong, he's got everything that you want in a modern day soccer player. But the wear and tear that you put on your body when you move that fast at that size,
Hmm.
that's the type of thing that can happen at any point, especially given the fact that modern turf isn't exactly the best thing. And I'm talking about grass and artificial,
Hmm.
not necessarily the best thing for your ligaments or your joints, as we've seen multiple occasions. But yeah, I saw the injury. I was very concerned, to be honest, because when your legs get kind of bundled up underneath you, bad things happen from
Yeah.
someone who's done it themselves. Not a lot of good can happen when you get folded up on yourself,
Yeah.
right? So the fact that it's only a strain, I think everybody breathed a sigh of relief there, but I'm with you. You take as much time as you need. And at the end of the day, obviously, I think Bayern's going to push to get him back in the lineup sooner rather than later. However, they have to protect their investment too,
Yeah.
because they're paying him a lot of money to be there for, the long haul. So let's just hope that it stays a strain and he can heal up quickly and take the time he needs to get back, because obviously he's such an important piece to that Canadian national team, not only from an on the field perspective, but an off the field perspective,
Hmm.
because he's the face of the team. He's the one everybody identifies with. He's the one that everybody points to saying that's the guy that's going to lead us to, a run at a potential, medal or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's just hope that, everything kind of plays out the way that it should, which is him getting as much rest as needed. And yeah, hopefully this is a blip on the radar of this is not a consistent thing with injuries. It's just, a couple of bad instances that have happened back to back.
Yeah. And I mean, tying into the World Cup there, obviously coming north of the border and also south of the border as well too, but North America in general in 2026, venues got announced. So
Hmm.
there's quickly, have to address the fact that there is a path that Canada could, in theory, play 5 of 6 games on home soil, whether it's in Toronto or on the West Coast or
Yeah.
wherever, depending on how sort of that group stage plays out. But wanted to get your thoughts just in general on the World Cup final going to MetLife Stadium in New Jersey.
Who decided that the absolute worst turf in the world would host one of the most prestigious sporting events in the world?
Yeah.
Like, have these people who've made the decisions not watched any NFL over the last 5 years and seen a record number of knee, Achilles, ankle, any type of lower body injury that have ruined people's seasons and careers?
Mhm.
Like, again, it's not even that it has happened recently. Look at when the Jets played the Dolphins in primetime. You had Jalen Phillips, who is absolutely coming on as one of the top defensive ends in the league coming into that game, blew out his Achilles in the first quarter.
Mhm.
Done for, probably next year. Because again, everybody's like, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers healed back. Well, how many games did Aaron Rodgers play this year? That's what I thought.
After his big teasing
Yeah,
tour that he did the whole
exactly.
time there. Yeah. Okay.
And when you're a defensive end, you're using your Achilles tendon a lot more than you are at quarterback. I don't know if you knew that or not, but you know,
Fun fact of the night.
fun fact
Guys.
of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Brees Hall, running back for the Jets, tore an ACL last year on MetLife Field. You look at when San Francisco, came to play at MetLife against the Giants a couple of years ago. You had 3 guys out for the year: Mostert, Bosa, and he's a corner. Forget his name. It's Travarius Ward.
Can't
No,
remember.
Jimmy Ward. Jimmy
Jimmy.
Ward. Yeah,
Jimmy.
Jimmy Ward. You lost 3 starting players in that game with knee injuries.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't get it. I really don't understand why you would award. I don't care if it's New York, New Jersey. I don't care. Put it somewhere where the players are going to be safe and they're going to be able to play at the highest level possible. And it's not going to affect anything from a psyche perspective. Because you think about how many players are going to go out there and it's going to be in the back of their mind the entire game. When's it
Mhm.
going to happen? Who's it going to happen to? I hope it's not me. And when that happens, you're not playing at the best, at the top of your game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot of anti-golf claps on this show, but let's give another angry, stern dad look at the decision makers for the World Cup final landing in MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, we did an internal review. Our first 4 episodes were way too positive.
Way too positive.
Yeah, we're just gonna crap all over everything.
Yeah,
But I mean, from a Canadian perspective, we knew it was going to be somewhere in the States, right? That the finals were going to be. They weren't going to put it in Toronto. They weren't going to put it in Vancouver, and that's fine, right? But to overlook some of the like brand new state of the art facilities like a SoFi Stadium in
yeah,
LA, right? Like Jerry World down in
yeah.
Dallas there. Like these giant multi-billion dollar facilities to go to MetLife Stadium, which even if you drive past it, looks depressing. Like it's just a
I
concrete slab out in East Rutherford, New Jersey.
And
It's
that's
just
the thing. I mean, I've never been to New Jersey, and I'm sure the people are lovely there, but I don't
the world is
know.
descending on the Jersey Shore. Okay,
Yeah,
sweet.
and that's what a lot of people have to base on their critique of New Jersey
Yeah.
is the Real Housewives of New Jersey and the Jersey Shore, both of which
Or
are not
Tony
flattering.
Soprano.
Yeah, both of which are not flattering to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, so it's just a missed opportunity, number one, but it would be literally the equivalent of, all right, London is hosting the World Cup. Are you going to do it at what, Wembley Stadium? No, no, no. We're going to go to North Glasgow and we're going to decide to put it out in this AstroTurf field, which has a long and horrific history of blowing out people's Achilles and knees and having lower body extremities that
Yeah.
have long-term effects on their careers.
So let's put it in perspective from a Canadian point. This is like, oh, we got the World Cup. We're going to be hosting some games. Oh, and they're actually going to have the finals being played in Canada. Oh, yeah, we're at BC Place. No. We're at Rogers Center. No. We're going to have it at the Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Like that's the type of shit that would happen if it was in Canada.
Yeah.
As an equivalent. Because anyways, I don't even want to get into it because you're getting me fired up here. And it's too late in the evening for me to get upset. But yeah, whoever made that
Got an
decision,
early morning. We can't get
yeah,
your heart rate up too much there. Otherwise,
whoever
yeah.
whoever made that decision, honestly, you need to reevaluate the professional career that you've taken because you obviously don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And, you want to put it near New York, we get it. But at the end of the day here, right?
Don't
Like,
doesn't New York have 2 MLS teams?
yeah, but yeah, but they don't have tens of thousand person stadium there. They would be putting it in like a 30,000 person at the most stadium, I think.
But at the end of the day, who cares? I mean, if you've got the facility, do it.
Yeah.
Like,
But,
anyways,
yeah.
we'll,
Well, that's all I got to say about that.
yeah. But before we end here, one more thing that actually came up today, right before we logged on and didn't have to wait for anything else to happen. Scotty Barnes, Toronto Raptors, was officially named an All-Star alternate today and is going to be representing the Toronto Raptors at the NBA All-Star game. So golf clap to
I
Scotty
see what
Barnes.
you did there.
Yeah,
You knew we could not end on a stern dad look
exactly.
there. We had to sprinkle in one more. So there you go. Scotty Barnes representing We the North, and frankly, what I think was deserving of that
Yes.
selection to begin with. But we will happily send Scotty to go represent the Great White North there at this year's All-Star game. So
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of positivity coming out of Raptorland since the big trade, but
they got off to a hot start, but
they
things have
did.
cooled off quite a bit. But hopefully we'll probably be seeing, but even by the time this airs, I would imagine probably some more moves up Masai's sleeve there with that February 8th trade deadline coming up.
Let's cross our fingers. But Kyle, always a pleasure, man. And let's do this again next week. How about
Oh, look, why don't we?
it?